There's a very famous comedian who takes the stage after people clap after an introduction like that and says, "Let's lower our expectations." But I really mean it. Let's give it up for Tony. That was first time host to talk all of his friends into doing this, and then the night we go to rehearsal tells us that he's never done it. So one of us calls us Satan, and the others called him names that weren't even that nice. But thank you for the opportunity to be here. Usually a couple times a week, about this time of night, I'm in a grocery store after work, buying something for dinner. You walk into an American grocery store in the evening, and what wafts out to get you, what intrigues your senses is that smell of freshly baked bread, or fresh baking bread, right? And it just, sometimes I stand in the nearby produce aisle and take it all in, even though I shouldn't have it because, you know, bread is like the worst thing you can eat. It's like the hazardous waste of this day. And you're not supposed to eat it, God forbid, eat butter on top of that. But, you know, sometimes it's just too much after a long day, and I'll go and buy the bread and take it out to the car and eat chunks of it. And then go back in and finish my grocery shopping. A truer story than I would like you to imagine. But what it does is it calls up all of those incredible memories we have of being in our mom's kitchen and coming home after school when my cash-strapped parents couldn't give me the packaged treats that I gave my children, or the healthy carrots or edamame. My mother would say, "Go out and have some bread." Give me a big hunk of bread and a stick of butter. Or in my family's case, parquet. Or the year my sister went to college, lard. Who knew? But it got me thinking about bread. And in advance of doing this, I got started thinking about how meaningful bread is and how culturally and historically important it is. And I know that now because one day I was really, really swamped at work. I mean, too much work. If I had worked every minute of the day, taking no breaks, I couldn't get my work done. So I gave up and Googled bread all day. And my coworkers in the back were nodding their heads, so sorry. And you know, when you think of how pervasive it is in our lives, I mean, bread is all over the Bible. Loaves and fishes, daily bread, communion. It's all over our literature. We have, it's in the Magna Carta, for heaven's sakes. And then it's also woven into our contemporary culture, like in the 60s, the hippies that would say to you, "Man, I need some bread," or "I don't have any dough." And bread is so important. There's no civilization that doesn't have bread or a substitute for bread, right? So I got started thinking about that. This story, the long way into it, is about bread. But I have to set a context for it first. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, I've been involved in projects designed to help the former Soviet republics develop practices of openness and transparency in government. One of the first groups that came through Tucson was a group, the lawyers were investigating the definition of private property for the Russian Constitution. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Trying to create laws and structures and a culture of openness without having the same history and sensibilities that we do. It's intriguing work. So with your tax dollars, there are programs that bring people over here to learn nation building at its core, and they stay with home hosts who volunteer, and they volunteer, or we take them around. They're either placed in a business, or we have speakers who speak. And in those 3 to 4 week visits to Tucson, Arizona, there's plenty of room to get lost in translation. Plenty of room for cultural disconnect, right? Like when we would take groups of people to the fair or meetings or any place and there were metal chairs, Russian women won't sit on metal chairs because they're afraid of getting the internal cold. Seriously, and I hate to be a cultural chauvinist, but I kind of laugh as well. I've had home hosts say, "I can't get my person to eat it all," and I'll say to the person, "Why is it that you're not eating?" They'll say, "Well, she didn't give me any tomatoes for breakfast, and the eggs were broken." Scrambled eggs. I I've had women cry in the shampoo aisle of the Albertsons because they didn't know which shampoo was right. So there are all sorts of, even though the people from the former Russian republics, even though they look a lot more like us than other places, they don't always have the same sensibilities, and we have to fight, staff have to fight our own cultural chauvinism too. Like, I want to just say, like, sit in the chair, okay? And here's something. When in Rome, as a cliche, does not translate at all. So I had a group in, and they were neat. And what we were hearing from 10 home hosts is, these people are needy, they're going to starve before they leave here. What are we going to do? I said, I don't know. So we'll go talk to people. Couldn't find out. They were secretive at meal times. And they were from Turkmenistan, so they weren't from one of the major cities. They were a little bit far afield from our usual, more cosmopolitan visitors. So we didn't know why. So one day I did a visit to the home host, and I said, well, I don't know why he goes in his room every night after dinner. Let's just go in. And so we went into the room, looked around, nothing intriguing, nothing I'd want to stay in the room for. Of course, you cannot tell, but I said, let's open his suitcase. And we did. And in it were 5 very large loaves of bread and 2 changes of clothes. And the Turkmen apparently believe that our genetically modified food is too dangerous for them to eat and that they'll become too fat within a 21-day period. So they were eating their own food that they brought. I had another little experience that was really funny. We had a group from, one of my cohorts who staffed this group was there. We had a group from Kazakhstan. And, we tend to think we're all, we're so rational. We know what's best. So we were fighting back and forth a little. They were very young, very superstitious, and very picky about what they ate. And they kept saying, well, we want soup. Well, this was July in Tucson, Arizona, and there's no place that has soup, much less a selection of soup. They were a tough group to deal with. They wanted things kind of demanding. Nothing was right. We were programming them kind of wrong. It was just a bad experience. But I said, oh my gosh, I know where we can take them. We'll take them to bison witches, because they have the soup and the hollowed out bread. Okay, this is great. This is just fabulous. 10 of them, 3 managers, horribly long day, been out sightseeing at the Desert Museum in 150-degree weather where no animal dares come out from the And so we go there, and everything was great. They order their soup, they get ready. I'm thinking, holy moly, I finally score one with these people. And then the trays came out. Now I'm watching 10 people from Kazakhstan get up, back away from the tables, and start spitting on the ground. And it turns out that hollowing out or wasting of bread is almost blasphemy in their culture. So not a hit. I guess to conclude, I want to tell you a little bit about this. When these groups come down, when they come in, we're aware that the people that we help in this community could go back and become the Thomas Jeffersons in their world. They could go back and change their country by becoming elected leaders, by working in the nonprofit sector, by renovating business, by getting rid of a culture of corruption that's endemic to many of those places. And so we meet them and we're excited and we feel full-hearted and good about ourselves, and we have flags when they arrive at the airport. And that first night is terrific, and that second week is a load of Thomas Jefferson. And in the third week we start talking to each other in rocky and bullwinkle voices and moves and swirl. I'm not proud of it. It is what it is. And when they leave, we think, holy shit, are we glad these people are gone. But like childbirth, a few days later, or when you read the news, or when you have a cultural connection, you forget the experience and you think of it in rosier terms. And I guess the moral of the story is that you can be both lost and found in translation.